This was one of the cleanest price actions of the week, and if you use the right VWAPs and read structure in trend, you should be able to find clean opportunities to find your bounce plays, specifically off of this New York VWAP. Let's look at ES here on the 1 minute. Now, I say easy structure to read bullish when we look back at the whole rest of the day. Clearly, buyers were in control. We want to be looking for longs, but as we go through these markups, it's kind of slow. It was a very slow day, indecisive day of let's just go from start to finish here at the open. First idea for longs would be to buy it as buyers step in control, holding that New York VWAP at the stop loss at low a day, just because sellers couldn't really extend away from this New York, right? They're really just holding around it, but buyers are showing their hand. Maybe this will be our higher low since we came in bullish at the open. Buyers defending it. Okay, let's trade back higher. So if we play that idea with a stop loss at low a day, that leaves us with like 16 points. Maybe you get 16 points to that high exactly on the first break of opening range high, which I often say in all these videos, don't run very far. Case in point would be here. Now, of course, there's plenty of days that do, and those look really great to trade, but normally I do not want to be chasing at the highest price, but also on the first break of opening range high. So make sure you go back and do your own markups so you can see as well. That's not always the most favorable play. Wait for the pullback, and I would say take the second break outside open range high, right? So the second opportunity after the buyers almost showed their hand there saying, okay, yeah, we are making those higher highs and higher lows. Here's our next higher low off of the New York VWAP. Any long around here, I mean, we can throw in a high day VWAP to see what that looks like. Let's turn that one purple so you can see it. Buyers step in control kind of at the opening range high again. Stop loss on that one would, if you don't want to go with current structure down here, which would be tough, I do say probably don't go with current structure. I preach that in my course, ASFX TV's Futures 2.0. You can get access to that and you'll see where I put my stop losses. Current structure is always going to be the most dangerous, where previous structure is the safer play. So down here, there's really nothing to the left. Maybe one of these pins back here. In hindsight 2020, you can see that would survive, but it's tough to say in real time. I mean, everybody that longs here is going to want to go nice and tight here at that structure. I can't necessarily blame them, but you can see doesn't quite work out, as it might just get pinned out here and then work its way a little bit higher. But regardless, as I said, today was super bullish, but it's kind of slow. I mean, even if you landed on the bounce play here with that wider stop of like 16 points, you're not getting your 1R or anything until an hour later. And you got to deal with slow chop in profit, not really pushing back into drawdown, maybe threatening your stop loss here, and then back into profit, and then 1R. So it's not just stress-free, buyers are in control, I'm buying it, new high a day, right? But I also do love how well buyers ultimately defend the New York here, they defend it there, and they defend it here again. Now, before we go on with the rest of the markups, I do want to think, I think I have in the micros marked up here. Let's see, maybe it's on the minis. If you look at here, I have it boxed off. Let's turn on the initial balance, which is the first hour of the day rather than the first 15 minutes. And you can see this yellow line. It actually broke it back here first. So we have a first break of initial balance high. Here's our second break of it. But regardless, a break of the initial balance high is kind of telling me that we probably don't go make a new low a day to the initial balance low now. I can turn off the open range high so you can see that red line on the bottom. And you can see down here, since we took out this top, we probably don't want to also take out the bottom. To get that number, you'd want to go over here to Edgefield and look at their initial balance report. If you go to their initial balance report in the past year, just by weekday, because this was on a Friday, and weekdays alone, 13% of the time, only 7 out of the last 51 Fridays. So a year's worth of Fridays, only 7 of them have broken the top and the bottom all within the same day. So there's an 82% chance it would only break one side. The reason I say that is because although it's small up here, on this case specifically on this first one, any short ideas you might have down here of maybe a lower high, maybe a lower high to want to go short it. First of all, you're fighting all the structure we can see here today still of who's been in control. We're still making higher lows today. It's a very tough short, but you are below the New York VWAP on the 1 minute for a few minutes there. But statistically, this probably doesn't run to the low a day because I just showed you only 7 out of the last 50 had the strength to break the top and the bottom. So we probably don't go do that. AKA, I should probably be looking for shorts to not work out and longs come back in at some point. And if you keep that in your mind, hopefully you could avoid this mess down here and be looking for longs once buyers show themselves back in, which would probably look, I mean, you could even say there would be your first time of saying, no, I don't want to sell it. Probably don't go lower. So let me throw in a long around this New York view while playing the bounce play, right? You don't need to time it perfectly saying, I'm going to buy it right here because that's when it goes straight into profit. Even if you bought this bounce play, right? Because at this point, It's looking pretty damn bullish. That looks like a nice bounce off New York VWAP. Stop loss, not a current structure, right? I don't want to suffocate it right here. Give it more space to these pins back at previous, and you give yourself more breathing room to hold through if it's not done ultimately holding that New York VWAP, and you could ultimately still win, right? The worst thing would be you get stopped out because your stop loss is right there, and then maybe you have to add back in just to make back up the loss rather than just straight up winning because you gave it a proper stop and you weren't too greedy on needing a full move or timing it perfectly, right? And then even after that one works out, the next play that we didn't go over, let it make a new high a day. If you miss this move here, don't be just jumping in at the top or on its way to the top. Let it make its hand for a new high. Let it pull back. Let's clean up some of these levels a little bit. We'll turn off the initial balance. We can even clear some of these draws. You guys all saw the edge rule report. That link is always down below if you want to look at more reports like that. But I also like this one a lot. New high a day, respecting New York VWAP again. And the open range high, right? A nice key level a couple times even. The first sign would be to buy it once buyers step back in. After the full VWAP retest, buyers are in. Stop loss. On this one, you could say it's a little tight. It's at that current structure. Previous, you could always do that. Or in this case, let's just say we went with current. The main idea is just not getting freaked out by this pullback here. Allow it to still build higher lows, which is normally why I say go with the wider stop prior to previous, because it could still want to come down here and work itself out. As long as it's holding this New York VWAP, I still want to be a buyer. But the idea that buyers are stepping back in on a high day break is telling me the pullback is probably finished. So we probably don't come back down to New York VWAP now because the pullback is done. So I shouldn't need a stop loss lower than here, but you never know. Better safe than sorry. But the whole idea that buyers defend it with another higher low, they take the high day VWAP there. If you didn't take that entry, could have just taken it there. 10 minutes later, and you could see a nice new rip for another new high a day. Now, it was very identifiable that the longs were clear on the 1 minute, and they work out pretty easily, I would say. Less drawdown than other days this week. But that doesn't mean it was necessarily the fastest, because even looking at this pullback, it looks very quick and easy, and it's clearly holding this New York VWAP. But let's just go from the high to the time it breaks that high a day VWAP. If I measure that out, that's 45 minutes that we just got to sit on our hands and let it pull back, not jump in on the longs, not know what to do yet. Maybe you could have even bought this consolidation the more I look at it. When it really slows around this open range high in New York VWAP, that could have just been a good buy there. And then you give yourself a real good stop loss way down there. That could have been another great play if you weren't waiting for the high day VWAP break. But same thing looking back on this pullback. Even if you did long it here at the open and it does eventually win, all that chop, 45 minutes. It doesn't really break out of the open range high and run until over here, which is at 11:30. So 2 hours after the open. Never a doubt did it look bullish. But all of this was an hour and a half, 2 hours. Pretty slow, right? This was the only quick move. I guess I'd say these few moves over here. Everything else is pretty choppy and pretty slow. On the note of that, yes, there are easy longs on the 1 minute here, but let's look at the 15-minute real quick, because you guys know that plays a part in my bias as well. If we throw in the daily view up to that day, do I have it on the micros here? I do. So looking on the micros instead, same idea. All those longs that we're finding on the 1 minute are in here. So on the 15-minute, that's a pretty tough long bias to have when it's clearly bearish pre-market. And then even just on the week, since this is a Friday, what had happened on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? We're coming into the week, at the end of the week, pretty bearish. So the bias isn't necessarily bullish. Yes, you could still scalp money to the upside on a bullish or bearish trend. But normally I like to find the next trend continuation to the downside, aka shorts would be easier money. But in this case, I was sticking to the short bias because up until it really breaks it, I'd say here. We could say even like this. Until 11 o'clock, 11:15, we could say this might be a lower high. And we do come back lower in the afternoon. I know the 1 minute looks like buyers are in control, and they were in fact in control. But no one would have necessarily been surprised if we did make another leg lower, since that ultimately was the trend. So that could be the one reason I'd say why it may have been tricky to take those longs on the 1 minute, right? Especially those later ones that we were saying, or the earlier ones, into this New York VWAP. I'd say all this slowing, why it didn't pop for a strong new high. You're into the daily VWAP on the 15 minutes. So that's a tough long to take into that VWAP, especially when you see it slowing. So that's why, again, reverting back to that initial balance, I think once you take out that high here, and especially later on over here, by 11 o'clock, if you're not looking for longs, because now statistically telling you, yeah, we probably don't go make a new low now. That 15-minute bearish trend probably doesn't continue, since we took out the top, it probably doesn't double break. Now you can keep on looking for longs. So if you weren't looking for the longs back here, I could understand it because you're trading into a VWAP. But once you break it the initial balance once and twice, I'd say the longs would have to be on your radar because all those stats we just said. Well, hopefully you guys are using the VWAP, playing it with the trend on the 1 minute off your key levels of the New York VWAP. New York VWAP pays, and it pays. So if you're only trading off of key levels, there's great opportunities of 4 New York VWAP retests today. There's an open range high retest there. Breaks of high day VWAP also incorporated into all these ideas, right? Because you could anchor it here as well. And you can see same thing, you're buying it. Once buyers step back in, stop loss below, go get that next pop, right? So always in the direction of trend, but also always off a key level. I don't really want to play around with trying to long this back here. Of course you could. That one would win, but what about the next pullback? Oh, the next pullback. Those no longer win, maybe because it's super late on a Friday, but also it's no longer off a key level. I'm really trying to play off the key levels in a clear direction of trend, which we had on this day, which the rest of the week we did not. I would just say the one thing was the 15-minute, maybe hand tying you a little bit because it was in disagreement. But hope you guys found value in that. Make sure to always reach out if you have any questions on the VWAP. I go through all of it on my daily live streams. You'll see me take these trades live, avoid some certain trades live, right? I didn't take this long in the morning because I saw that daily view up above me. I'm like, I don't know if we're going to go higher. The 15 minutes looking pretty bearish. Give me more information to make me believe the longs. And that's what we got later on in the afternoon. Okay, well now it's been 4 or 5 hours. The buyers are holding control. Let me let loose of that bearish bias and just read and react to VWAP. And then there you get the money. So like I said, trade safe, follow your rules, reach out if you need me. I'll see you guys on the desk tomorrow morning.